Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and sitting down with me to unpack our sources today is our resident expert.
Hey everyone. Really excited to jump into this one today.
Yeah, same here. So our mission for this deep dive is to go through a stack of notes and research from James Clear's work on atomic habits. And we're basically exploring how, the absolute smallest behavioral changes act as the actual building blocks for remarkable success.
Right, the micro habits.
Exactly. But before we get into the science of it, we have to talk about the origin story from the text because it's pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. It's a rough one to read.
It really is.
hmm
So on the final day of his sophomore year of high school, a flying baseball bat basically slips from a classmate's hands and just smashes directly into his face.
Just a complete freak accident.
Yeah. And the damage was immediate, and it was
Uh-huh.
devastating. I mean, he suffered a distorted nose, shattered eye sockets, multiple skull fractures. The swelling was so severe they had to put him into a medically induced coma.
Yeah, just to survive. He couldn't even breathe on his own.
It's the absolute definition of a catastrophic trauma, the kind of instant event that just completely severs your life into like a before and an after.
Right. And so how does an injury of that magnitude actually connect to the science of habit formation?
Yeah.
Because, you can't just bounce back from that overnight.
No, you physically and neurologically cannot make massive leaps after something like that. So when the author eventually went to college at Denison University, he was forced to rely on microhabits out of pure necessity.
Just to function.
Exactly. While his peers were staying up late, he built this relentless habit of just going to sleep early. He kept his dorm room meticulously tidy.
Yeah.
He started lifting weights just a few times a week.
Small stuff.
Yeah, really small stuff. But it was the slow, almost invisible compounding effect of those tiny choices that eventually led to him being named an ESPN Academic All-American.
Which is huge.
Right. He earned the university's highest academic honor. He essentially rebuilt his entire physical and academic life atom by atom.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit because personal survival and recovery, that's incredibly compelling.
Definitely.
But for you listening to this deep dive, we need to look at how this philosophy scales. I mean, if this is just a strategy for college students recovering from head injuries, it's a nice story, but
But it doesn't apply to everyone.
right. But the sources show this exact same mechanism working in ruthless, world-class professional environments.
Oh, absolutely. And there is honestly no better illustration of that scale than the story of British cycling.
Oh, I love this example.
It's so good. So if we look at the bigger picture, back in 2003, British cycling was like the global definition of mediocrity.
They were terrible.
They really were. They had spent nearly 100 years achieving practically nothing. I mean, since 1908, they had won a single Olympic gold medal.
Wow.
And in over a century, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France.
The reputation was actually so bad that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe literally refused to sell gear to the team.
Wait, really? They wouldn't even sell to them?
No. The manufacturer was legitimately afraid it would hurt their commercial sales if other cycling professionals saw the British team riding their bikes.
That is a staggering level of failure.
Right. So what changes?
Well, the organization brings in a new performance director named Dave Brailsford. And instead of demanding this, massive sweeping overhaul of the entire program, he implements a philosophy he called the aggregation of marginal gains.
The aggregation of marginal gain.
Yeah, the core thesis was to basically break down every conceivable component that goes into riding a bicycle and then just improve each one by 1%.
Just 1%. And the specific details in the research are wild. I mean, they did the obvious things, right? Like redesigning the bike seats to be more aerodynamic.
Sure, standard stuff.
Yeah, standard. But they also rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. They wore electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature.
Right, but then they kept pushing into the most unexpected microscopic areas of the athletes' lives.
Like what?
Well, they systematically tested different massage gels to find the one that yielded the fastest muscle recovery.
Wow.
They even hired a surgeon to teach the riders how to wash their hands properly to minimize the risk of catching a cold. They tested pillows and mattresses to figure out exactly which combination led to the deepest REM sleep for each specific rider.
That is amazing. But my absolute favorite detail from the sources they painted, the inside of their transport truck, stark white.
Oh yeah, the white truck.
Yeah. They did this so they could easily spot like little specks of dust that might get into the finely tuned bike gears and degrade performance. These
Ah.
tiny, almost paranoid adjustments.
And the result of all that paranoia,
Yeah.
just 5 years later at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, they won 60% of the available gold medals.
That's insane.
They set 9 Olympic records at the London Games, and they went on to win 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years.
It comes down to the undeniable mathematics of that 1%.
Yep.
And the text gives this great airplane analogy to make the math relatable for you listening. Okay, so let's unpack this. If you are flying from LAX to New York and the pilot adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south,
Which is tiny.
right, you won't even notice the nose of the plane move at takeoff. But by the time you cross the country, you end up in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Time magnifies the margin.
That is the perfect way to visualize it, because the text explains the 1% rule mathematically. Basically, if you can get 1% better every day for 1 year, you end up 37.78 times better by the time you're done.
Almost 38 times better.
Yeah. Conversely, if you get 1% worth each day, you decline almost all the way down to 0. Habits are literally the compound interest of self-improvement.
Right. You
Yeah.
ultimately get what you repeat. But look, I have to push back on the math here just a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because human beings are not algorithms, right?
Mm.
If I am trying to get 1% better at running and I catch the flu for a week, my compounding interest breaks. Like, we aren't bank accounts. Life gets in the way.
Oh, totally. And that is a really crucial distinction to make. The 1% rule is a trajectory, not this rigid daily requirement where a single missed day ruins the whole equation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the underlying philosophy is about building a system that absorbs the shock of getting the flu. It's about ensuring your default trajectory is angled upward over time.
Which brings us to this massive psychological hurdle.
Yeah.
Because if the trajectory of a 3.5-degree shift is so obvious on paper, why is it so incredibly difficult for us to stick to a new routine for more than a few days?
Right. If it was just math, everyone listening would be crushing every single one of their resolutions.
Exactly. Why do we fail?
We struggle because of what the text calls the valley of disappointment.
The valley of disappointment.
Yeah. See, human beings are wired to expect linear progress. We put in a week of hard work, and we expect to see a week's worth of tangible results.
Right. Give me my reward.
Exactly. But the most powerful outcomes of any compounding process are delayed. Early efforts rarely yield immediate visible feedback. So people make a few agonizing changes, look in the mirror, fail to see a tangible payoff, and they just quit.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The text uses an ice cube analogy to explain the physics of that valley. So imagine you have an ice cube sitting on a table in front of you.
Yeah.
The room is 25 degrees. You slowly heat it up, 26 degrees, 27, 28. You're putting in the energy, you're doing the work, but the ice cube is just sitting there.
Yeah.
Nothing is happening.
Right. It looks exactly the same.
Exactly. 29, 30, 31. Still nothing.
And that 31-degree mark, that is the exact moment the vast majority of people abandon their new habit.
Yes. But then you hit 32 degrees and the ice finally begins to melt. A 1-degree shift, which, by the way, required the exact same amount of energy as the temperature increases before it suddenly unlocks a massive physical transformation.
It's such a great visual.
The work you put in at 26 and 28 degrees, it wasn't wasted. It was just being stored.
And when you finally break through that plateau, which the author categorizes as the plateau of latent potential, the outside world will just look at you and call you an overnight success.
Because they only see the melting ice.
Exactly. They were not there for the slow, agonizing temperature rise in that valley of disappointment.
Right. But I have to challenge the core premise of how we actually survive that valley.
Okay.
Prevailing wisdom always tells us that to push through those times when the ice isn't melting, you need massive, audacious goals, right? Like if I am training for a marathon, I literally need that 26.2-mile finish line. Without the goal, I have no idea how many miles I'm supposed to run today. So how can the text argue that goals are useless?
Well, it doesn't argue they are useless for setting a direction, but it heavily critiques them as the actual mechanism for progress. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So if we look at survivorship bias, we only ever interview the Olympic gold medalist, right? And we assume their massive goal to win is what got them there.
Sure.
But we conveniently ignore that every single athlete who finished last on that track had the exact same goal. The goal did not differentiate the winner from the loser. The daily system of continuous small improvements did.
Oh, wow. The marathon example actually proves your point perfectly now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Because how many people train for 6 months, cross the finish line of a marathon, and then stop running entirely the very next week?
A staggering percentage, because
Yeah.
the goal is gone. And when the goal is gone, the motivation just vanishes with it.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and goals also create this artificial restriction on your happiness.
Yes.
They create this psychological trap where you tell yourself, once I reach my goal, then I'll be happy. You put off your satisfaction until some future milestone that honestly may or may not even happen.
It's like treating a symptom without addressing the cause. If you have a messy room and you set a goal to clean it, you can summon the sheer willpower to tidy up for an hour.
Yeah.
Goal achieved.
Right?
But if you don't change the pack rat habits, the underlying system that led to the mess in the first place, your room will just be a disaster again next week.
Exactly.
So if we are dropping our fixation on the scoreboard and focusing entirely on the daily practice, what is the actual engine driving those systems?
That requires looking at the deepest layer of behavior change, and that is the identity shift.
The identity shift.
Yeah, you can visualize behavior change like the layers of an onion. The outermost layer is changing your outcomes, what you get, like losing weight, publishing a book, winning a championship.
Okay, the results.
Right. Then the middle layer is changing your processes, what you do, implementing a new gym routine or a daily writing schedule.
Habits themselves.
Exactly. But the absolute core of the onion is changing your identity, what you believe, your worldview, your biases, and your self-image.
And most of us work from the outside in. We say, I want to be skinny, which is the outcome,
Yeah.
so I'll stick to this brutal diet, which is
Yeah.
the process. And we never even consider the underlying beliefs that drive our relationship with food.
Right, and behavior that is incongruent with the self simply will not last. You can force a process for a while, through willpower, but eventually your identity will pull you back to your baseline.
The sources highlight a brilliant contrast here, using smoking.
Oh, this is a great example.
It is. So imagine two people trying to resist a cigarette. You offer the first person to smoke, and they say, no thanks, I'm trying to quit.
Sounds perfectly reasonable.
Right, it sounds fine, but their language reveals they still identify as a smoker who is desperately trying to be something else.
Yes.
But then you offer the second person a cigarette, and they say, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. It is a microscopic shift in phrasing, but it signals a complete neurological shift in identity.
We see the exact same mechanism in the story of Brian Clark from the text. He was an entrepreneur who chewed his fingernails his entire life. It was this deeply ingrained, non-conscious, nervous habit.
Just totally automatic.
Yeah. And he tried to stop through sheer willpower, focusing on the outcome, but he always relapsed. Then he did something highly unusual. He asked his wife to schedule him for a professional manicure.
Which is such a weird move for a chronic nail biter.
It really is. But the manicurist told him that underneath the damage from the chewing, he actually had really healthy, structurally attractive nails.
Wow.
And for the first time in his life, he felt a sense of pride in his fingernails. He shifted his identity from, I am a chronic nail biter, to, I am someone who takes pride in caring for my hands. And the chewing stopped entirely.
Just like that, the true behavior change was the identity change. But this raises an important question for anyone listening. Because how do you actually execute that shift? You don't just wake up, look in the mirror, and completely fake a new identity by shouting, I am a marathon runner,
Nah.
if you haven't run a single mile in your life.
Right, because your brain knows you're lying to it.
Exactly. Your brain is like, no, you're not.
Precisely. Your identity emerges out of your habits. You aren't born with preset beliefs about yourself. You only believe your current identity because you have years of proof backing it up.
That makes sense.
If you go to the gym even when it's snowing outside, you have undeniable evidence that you are committed to fitness. So it requires a two-step process. First, decide the type of person you want to be. Second, prove it to yourself with small, undeniable wins.
Prove it with wins.
Yeah, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
And there is a deeply comforting point in the text regarding those votes. You don't need a unanimous vote to change your identity. You just need a majority.
Yes, that is so important.
Like, you are going to cast a few votes for bad behaviors. You'll eat a donut, you'll skip a workout. That's just being human. You just need the aggregate majority of your daily actions to cast votes for the new identity.
Right. And if we want to ensure we are casting those majority votes efficiently, we have to understand the exact neurological ballot box where those votes are counted.
Which means looking at how a deliberate choice becomes an invisible habit in the brain.
Exactly. To understand that, the sources take us back to 1898 to a psychologist named Edward Thorndike and his experiments with cats.
Oh, right, the puzzle boxes. So Thorndike would place these cats inside a custom-built puzzle box. There was a door, a hidden lever, and a bowl of food waiting outside.
And at first they had no idea what to do.
No clue. When first placed in the box, the cats just scrambled around randomly, pawing at the walls, until they accidentally stepped on the lever, the door opened, and they got the food.
Right, and Thorndike tracked the timing of every single attempt. During the first few trials, it took the cats an average of 1.5 minutes to escape. But after 20 or 30 trials, the cats learned to cut straight to the solution. During the last few trials, they escaped in an average of just 6.3 seconds.
From a minute and a half to 6 seconds.
Yes. The useless random movements faded away entirely, and the useful action was heavily reinforced.
So think of your conscious mind as an overworked CEO. It can only focus on one major, novel problem at a time. It absolutely does not want to spend 1.5 minutes figuring out the physics of a puzzle box every single time it encounters one.
It's too expensive cognitively.
Exactly. So the CEO pawns off recurring problems to the non-conscious mind. That delegation of tasks, that automated, frictionless solution to a recurring problem, is the literal definition of a habit.
Now, you listening probably already know the basic structure of a habit loop: cue, craving, response, reward.
Right.
It runs every moment of our lives. But what's fascinating here isn't the loop itself, it's how aggressively we can manipulate the levers within that loop to hijack our own neurology.
How so?
Well, we can break it down into a problem phase and a solution phase. The problem phase starts with a cue, like a bit of information that predicts a reward. Your phone buzzes.
Okay.
Then comes the craving. You don't actually crave the physical text message. You crave the change in your internal state. You want to feel connected or entertained.
Right. Then we hit the solution phase. The response is the actual habit you perform, you grab the phone, and finally the reward. You read the message, satisfying the craving,
Yep.
and the conscious brain notes that the strategy worked and the loop is reinforced.
Exactly. To master this, the text maps that loop directly to the 4 laws of behavior change. If you want to create a good habit, you don't rely on willpower, you manipulate the environment.
Okay, break down the laws for us.
Law 1 for the cue, make it obvious. Law 2 for the craving, make it attractive. Law 3 for the response, make it easy. And Law 4 for the reward, make it satisfying.
Make it easy is the ultimate hack here, I think. Like, think about streaming services.
Oh, they are masters at this.
They have engineered the response to be so frictionless that the next episode automatically plays in 5 seconds. You actually have to exert willpower to stop the habit.
Right. They made the good habit well. Good for them. Incredibly easy.
So if you want to break a bad habit, you just invert the laws.
Yeah.
Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. If you want to stop watching so much TV, don't just turn it off. Take the batteries out of the remote and put them in a drawer in another room.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you introduce physical friction to disrupt the response phase.
But this introduces a terrifying reality about that overworked CEO delegating tasks. Once our brains have successfully handed these loops over to the non-conscious mind, they literally become invisible to us.
They're just running in the background.
Completely. The cues are still everywhere in our environment, but we no longer consciously register them.
So how do you fight an enemy you can't even see? I mean, tracking every single subconscious urge sounds incredibly exhausting.
It is, and the danger of this automaticity is profound. The sources detail a paramedic who attended a family gathering, took one look at her father-in-law, and immediately said, "You need to go to the hospital right now."
Wow. Was he sick?
He felt completely fine. But hours later, he was in life-saving surgery for a major blocked artery.
How did she know?
She had unknowingly learned to recognize the microscopic changes in blood distribution in the face of a heart attack patient. Her non-conscious brain recognized the cue and triggered the alarm before her conscious brain even knew what she was looking at.
That is incredible. And there's also the military analyst from the text during the Gulf War, right?
Yes.
He shot down a missile on his radar because his intuition told him it wasn't a friendly plane, even though it looked identical to one on the screen. Or the retail clerk who was so used to cutting up empty gift cards that when a customer handed over a valid active credit card, she just cut it in half entirely on autopilot.
Exactly. We fall into these neural pathways before we even realize the loop has started.
So we need a mechanism to force the non-conscious back into the conscious. We need to make the invisible visible again.
And the most effective example of this comes from the Japanese railway system. They use a safety method called pointing and calling.
Pointing and calling.
Yeah. As the train operators run their highly automated routes, they physically point at objects and call out commands. They point at the signal and actually speak the words, "Signal is green." They point at the speedometer and call out the exact speed.
Let's look at the actual mechanism there, because it sounds a bit ridiculous to do this out loud in an empty cabin.
Yeah.
But the physical act of pointing engages the motor cortex, right?
Right.
And vocalizing the status engages the language centers of the brain. You are forcibly interrupting the automatic default pathway and forcing the overworked CEO to look at the task.
And this simple act of friction reduces railway errors by up to 85%.
85%, that's massive.
It is. And to apply pointing and calling to your own life, the text offers a foundational tool called the habit scorecard.
How does that work?
You literally write down a list of your daily routine. Wake up, turn off alarm, check phone, go to bathroom, shower. And you verbally or physically grade them. You put a plus sign next to the positive habits, a minus sign next to the negative ones, and an equal sign next to the neutral ones.
You aren't doing this to judge yourself or feel guilty, though, right?
No, not at all. You are doing it to break the cognitive slumber. You are forcing your conscious brain to audit the tasks it delegated years ago. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You have to force the visibility.
Wow. So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together for you listening? True, lasting improvement isn't about massive cinematic overnight transformations. It's about leveraging the ruthless math of the 1% rule. It's about trusting the plateau of latent potential, knowing the ice will eventually melt when the energy hits 32 degrees. It's about upgrading your core identity through a majority vote of daily actions, rather than obsessing over the finish line of your goals. And it's about mastering that four-step neurological loop by making the good cues obvious and the bad cues impossible.
It really is. But I'll leave you with this final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
We established today that habits begin with cues in our physical environment, which trigger deep-seated neurological cravings. But consider the reality of the modern world. Your digital environments, the apps you use, the feeds you scroll, are constantly curated by algorithms specifically designed by engineers to trigger those exact cravings before you even realize it.
Oh, man.
Right. If your environment dictates your habits and your habits dictate your identity, who is really casting the votes for the person you are becoming? Is it you or the algorithm you're plugged into?
That is a terrifying but necessary question. Something to seriously evaluate the next time your phone buzzes and you reach for it without thinking. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the most remarkable results don't come from massive leaps. They come from mastering the invisible 1%. We will catch you next time.